All right, so you want to sell more stuff. So there's a couple of things that you got to do to sell more stuff, but on the same token, there's some things that if you do these things, not only are you not going to find more buyers, you're actually going to repel people. You're actually going to find that there's going to be people who will say, I will never do business with you. So you got to avoid a handful of things, and we're going to be talking about it on our show today. Not just things that I think are obvious not to do, but things that other people do that if you're newer to business, you're going to think, am I supposed to do these things? It feels kind of slimy. Am I supposed to try these things? All that and more is on today's podcast. Hey, everybody, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and you've come to the right place to learn how to do business better. There's not a lot of theory on this show. It's all practical stuff, the actionable things you need to know to grow your business and simply do business better. We're going to dive into this conversation today that all came about from an email I received this morning. But before we dive in, here's a word from one of the great businesses that sponsors the show. Check out this ad. And don't forget, you can always support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. We'll be right back soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all of this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutions.llc.com to find out more. All right, this episode is going to be a fun one because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Sales fails, the things that drive me crazy in sales. And if you've been unfortunate enough to be a victim of one of these things, or worst case scenario, if you're doing one of these things, my hope is that we're all going to walk away from today's episode with a little bit of a better idea of how to sell in a more compelling way. And when we say compelling, I mean in a way that you actually feel good about, you feel confident about, you're happy about, and you don't feel like a slimy salesperson at the end of the day. All that to say, I did get an email today. This was a guy who reached out to me to sell me something several weeks ago. I don't remember what the details were, but somebody emailed me and it was basically a very generic email. And really what we're going to do today is we're going to break down, by the way, some of like the worst of the worst, the things that I see a lot of people do. And if you're doing these things yourself, I'll just say the TLDR or too long didn't listen of this podcast is just stop doing these things. They don't work long-term. And when they do work, they don't typically get you great customers. They typically get you desperate customers. Desperate customers are never great long-term buyers. They're only good for people trying to churn and generate cash in the short term. It's not sustainable long-term. So all that to say, let's talk about this email I got today. This guy had reached out a few weeks ago and was asking me a question about something, and then basically said, hey, by the way, I have this really interesting thing I was thinking of for your business. I'd love a chance to tell you about it. Do you have a few minutes to talk about it? Well, I already knew this was a sales email because I get these all the time. You probably get it all the time yourself. So I just didn't respond, which is how I treat 98% of these is I get an inbox, I get an email, I get what have you. The person, and we're going to talk today, by the way, of like the generally bad things that you shouldn't do, but then like these specific things that again are just like the worst of the worst, but like generally bad things, the person who sends like an essay about their business, they send me a DM and they say, our company, whatever, we've been in business for 40 years. And then they give like the full 40-year history. And then they end it with, now that you know a little bit about us, tell us about you. And do you think we could help? And it's like, dude, I don't even know you. Delete, move on, what have you. So this guy had emailed me. He said, I have a pretty interesting offer for you. They're all interesting offers in people's minds, right? So I ignored it, didn't respond to it. Like I said, it was a few weeks ago. Well, I get this email, and the email title, and it's funny, I almost wonder if I was getting trolled when I first opened it, because I have specifically talked about not doing this specifically on the podcast, and I've talked about it a lot on social media. I've said, please do not do this. This is one of the worst things you can do in sales, only because I have been exposed to it myself, and here someone is doing it to me. So I get this email. It's titled, Did I Do Something Wrong? And let me tell you guys, I was triggered. I was triggered reading this. I normally ignore almost every sales email, message, whatever that comes through. I stopped what I was doing. The email popped up. I stopped what I was doing and I addressed it immediately because I was so annoyed by this. So it was titled, Did I Do Something Wrong? I open it up. It says, Hey, Blake, I hope you're having a great week. I lost touch with you from our previous conversation. I'm assuming you're busy, but I was wondering, is everything okay? Or did I do something wrong? Best, the person emailing me. I've gotten many versions of this over the years, and it's always, did I do something wrong? I love the ones that are also like, and this was the title really, but is everything okay? Are you okay? I haven't heard from you. I hate this kind of email. I hate it. And it makes me think of this style of sales where, I've talked about on the show before, Brian Sexton, who does People Buy From People, an amazing sales book. The whole concept is literally the title of it, People Buy From People. So if you want to sell more, try being a normal human being. And part of life, by the way, is understanding that some people are going to gel with you. Some people are not going to gel with you, meaning some people will buy from you. And some people, even if they like you, won't buy from you because they simply don't need what you have. Or they just flat out won't like you, and then they really won't buy from you. In a quota-driven, ever-growing demand for more society around business, that doesn't fly with some people. I think in some people's minds, the fact that not everyone will buy from them is a challenge. It's like, no, I'm going to get, this person told me no, and no doesn't really mean no. So how do I convince them? We've probably all been in that situation. I had someone come to my door, a door-to-door salesperson. I opened it. Somebody was trying to sell me a house camera service. I said, I'm not interested. Thank you. He said, well, hang on, let me, here's the really annoying thing, by the way, don't do this because this drives me crazy too. I said, hey, I'm not interested. And he goes, well, I haven't even had a chance to tell you about it yet. So how do you know you're not interested? Which, man, that peeves me off. I'm telling you, nothing. I mean, it gets me hot. It gets me frustrated where it's the wrong footing from the get-go. But so this guy comes to my door. He says this, he goes, well, I haven't even had a chance to tell you yet. And I said, you know what, man, I appreciate that. But I'm actually fairly familiar with your product and I already know I don't need it. I'm not interested. And I said it as deliberately as I could. And he goes, well, you probably don't know what makes us a little bit different from what you might know. Let me just take a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about our product and why it'd actually be a great fit for you. And I looked this guy in the eyes and I said, hey, I understand that someone has probably told you not to take no for an answer. I am telling you no. I appreciate the hustle. I appreciate the earnestness. My answer is no. Please take that as an answer. And I think what probably also annoyed me was he almost acted like I was being mean to him. Which I was being pretty steady about it. But he goes, okay, yeah. I mean, if you don't want to hear about this great offer, and he kind of like meandered away. And I was like, I don't want to hear about it because I already know I don't want it from the get-go. I don't want it. Some people have a problem with that. I have learned, by the way, that if you can remove the ego from sales, it will actually it'll save you time and allow you to sell more because you will move on from the person who's not that interested in trying to win them and instead redirect all of your energy on the person who is interested. I think sometimes we see this as a game where every person I meet, it's on me to win them over. but all the energy and time you spend on that person could have been spent on the person who 5 minutes into the conversation, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I was just talking to my spouse about needing this kind of service. Oh my gosh, I was just telling a coworker I needed this exactly. It's so funny talking to you. Like, that's the kind of person you want to talk to. You don't want to spend an hour and a half talking to someone. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine who was telling me about a sales call he was on, and he was saying that he had been on the call for an hour, and the person finally was like, I don't think I'm going to do it. I don't think I'm interested. And he was like, man, it was such a gut punch because we were like right there. And which we've all been on the kind of those long-winded calls. So I don't mean this in a condescending way, but on the flip side, something you can learn from that is there has to be certain questions you ask from the get-go that validate, is this a potential buyer or not from the start? And so what I find myself in conversations when I'm not even really clear why we're talking. I was in a conversation with a gentleman the other day, and we were talking about his podcast. And I very early on in the conversation, I said, hey, are we talking right now because you're telling me about your show as like a fellow podcaster? Or are we talking because you think that I might have an answer to a problem you have? We're talking because you're thinking about hiring my service Podcastable for you. And he goes, oh, we're talking because of Podcastable. I think I might want to hire your service. And I said, okay, great. That frames the conversation for me now. As opposed to, and by the way, if saying that feels a little clunky to you, you'll get better at it where it's not so rigid. But getting that clarity from the get-go of the conversation can be really good to let you know, how long am I going to invest in this conversation? How long will the call be? Or how long will the conversation be? And more importantly, what hat do you need to wear? Is it a sales hat, or is it I'm validating, I'm listening, we're just hanging out, shooting the breeze, what have you. But knowing when to ask those questions can be really valuable for setting you up on that sales conversation. But let's get back to the point. There are these things that not only are they bad habits in sales, they do not generate meaningful long-term customers. And I mentioned that earlier. And if you haven't listened to the podcast long-term, you might not know this concept, but it's fairly intuitive. It is infinitely better for you to make one sale from someone who's going to buy from you again and again and again and again, buy it for life, than it is to sell to one person, they churn, they move on, they have a bad experience, and to have to always sell to a new person. Now, if you've been in sales, you already understand this concept because you know the amount of trust that has to be built with someone, the likability factor, just understanding how that works. Well, when you already have history with someone, when you've already done good business with someone, that is such a shorter road to the next sale than it is finding a new customer. So these things are not just bad habits in sales. They do the opposite. They not detract. What's the word? They repel people from doing business with you. Now, I'd gotten this email and I was so annoyed. I responded, which I almost never respond. And I wrote this probably 3 or 4 different times because I really, for all I know, this was somebody who was doing sales on their own end. They're just trying to make their next deal, what have you. So I tried to not be rude or mean about it, but I was very direct. And so I responded and I said, hey, thank you for reaching out. Maybe I missed your email because I couldn't remember if I'd read an email or not. But I said, whether these emails are automated or not, which by the way, most of the time when you respond to a DM or a message or what have you, most of the time you can just know that that is a sequence. It is an automated sequence. It's an AI sequence. More often than not, the person sending off these kinds of message isn't actually writing it themselves. More often than not, it is a paid service, or like I mentioned, it's some kind of automated system. So even responding to these emails probably falling on deaf ears regardless. But so I wrote, whether these emails are automated or not, you should know that the whole "is something wrong" sales strategy is fairly toxic. I say this because I've seen your selling method criticized on LinkedIn before now. And this was true. I had a friend of mine who had received a email from this person a few months ago and had blurred out the name and was being fairly critical about this person's sales process. and it being pretty disingenuous. So I had remembered that data point. And so I said, hey, I'm saying this because I've seen your selling method criticized on LinkedIn. And as a courtesy to you, and as someone who's contributed to your content, because we did a little show together, or a little content piece together, I said, I would ask you to consider a different method in the future. And then I signed it with, I'm not interested in anything you are selling. Thank you, Blake, which I felt a little bad in the sense of I didn't want it to come across as like brutal, like I will never buy from you, but also being candid and direct and mentioning that comment around this kind of stuff will repel people away from you. I went from maybe down the road to we don't have the same values. We don't do business the same way. And I'm probably never going to buy from you. So what I thought I'd do on this show today is let's talk about, we talked about this one. Let's talk about some of the ones that people do, some of the worst habits that people do. And I'm bringing this up because, again, you'll probably see people do this the more you get into business. And the worst thing that you could do would be to think that these things actually work and try it yourself when they're just not good for business. This one, for example, I really dislike because it's all about fake sincerity. It's fake genuineness. It's not real. This person's saying, is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? One side of this, by the way, is not great because whenever you're selling to someone, you want to sell with authority. I know what I'm talking about. I'm the right answer. I have credibility and experience in what I'm doing. And when you come to someone with this tone of, did I do something wrong? Is everything okay? You're immediately lowering your value in your buyer's mind. And there's a lot of great content around that, by the way. And some of it's a little over the top, a little bit too much, like I don't know the word for it, ego stroking, I guess, but it's just a general concept. The more desperate you seem on an email, the less likely someone is going to buy from you. All that to say, this whole thing around fake sincerity, like my best friend might reach out and say, hey, are you doing okay? Is everything okay? Some random dude on the internet isn't going to email me that. It's not real. We don't have a relationship. We don't have a backstory together. We've never done business together. So even my customers that I've known for years, I can think of maybe one customer that I've done business with for almost 10 years. And that's probably the only customer that I would say, hey, are you okay? Are things okay? How are you doing? Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not intentional or kind or caring or what have you. It's just, I don't immediately go there. Like with that person, with that customer, I would probably immediately go there because we know each other so well and there's so much trust there. But for everyone else, I'm probably going to warm up to that. I'm probably going to be like, yeah, what's going on? Hey, so I saw that, your number one salesperson's quitting. How's that going? And, I'd listen to their response and be like, yeah, well, so how about you? How are you doing? You doing okay? And that would come after, like I said, warming up the conversation a bit. So to get this from someone who I don't know at all, it's icky. It's like, dude, I don't know you. Let's not act like we're best friends. We're not, right? So I hate this kind of sales thing. Well, I threw together a couple other examples of some things that I really dislike. That, again, a lot of people do these. Don't do these. So the first one being, don't guilt the prospect. And I put up some notes on this tab here. Let me look at this. Don't guilt the prospect. Don't make them feel bad for not getting back to you. Even though, by the way, we definitely have those sales conversations where the person came to you, they came to you to buy from you. And when you said the price, the offer, what have you, they said, yes, let's do it. And then they vanished. They disappeared. So in some ways, I understand the guilting piece because it's like, dude, you came to me. Where are you? Where is this person? What's happening here? And I've had some experience with that in the past too. So that's the first one. The other one I really dislike, and I already mentioned this one, would be not taking no for an answer. So we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but this whole thing about, sales is a battle of wills. It's on me to handle every objection. There are some general things that I've learned to respond to. And then there are other things that I will just never have to learn how to deal with because there are just certain objections that I'm not interested in dealing with them. Like, here's a really good example. Let's just keep it to the podcast with Podcastable. Let's say I'm talking to someone and I say, hey, yeah, if you're doing a podcast, what have you, and they say, I hate podcasts. I'll never do a podcast. That's not an objection for me to handle. That is valuable information for me to take and move on and say, great, thank you. They just saved me time. So I should save them time by getting out of their hair and moving on. Obnoxious salespeople, I got to deal with the objection. Well, how do you know you don't want a podcast yet? Well, man, a lot of people in your field are doing podcasts. Have you considered what it could mean for this stuff's obnoxious. The person just resolutely told you, I hate podcasts. I don't listen to them. I don't even know where to find them. I will never, ever, ever do a podcast. And you took that as a challenge to overcome rather than a valuable data point that's going to save you time. So not taking no for an answer, all this stuff, it's important to know what are valuable objections versus not so valuable objections. And I say not so valuable objections that aren't worth dealing with. An objection I might lean into would be something like someone says, yeah, I want to do a podcast, but I only have time to post one episode a month. And so I don't see the value of the service. They say, I want to do podcasting, but I just don't have the time to commit to it. And so what I might do, and it's not even objection handling, I'm not battling with them. What I'm doing instead is I'm informing them. So I might say, hey, well, a lot of people when they, I mean, I get it. You're a busy business owner. Who isn't, right? What I've seen a lot of people do is they do batch recording. They take a few hours one day. They record in those few hours a bunch of pieces of content, a bunch of episodes, and then they either post those as individual episodes or they cut them up into micro episodes. So one afternoon can actually generate content for you for the next 3, 4, 5 months. Now, if that would be something that's doable for you, if I could help you with that, would that be a service you'd be interested in? And then the person either says, okay, yeah, I didn't know about this. I wasn't in the know. You just informed them. You weren't challenging them, but you were educating their bias or their lack of info or what they didn't know about something. And they were either receptive to it or they doubled down, which that can be related to how you handled it or what have you. Or they were kind of let you off easy. And then now that they see like an answer, they're like, well, actually, you know what? I don't even really want to do this. But all that to say, some things are worth dealing with. And some things still, again, I hate podcasts, are not worth dealing with. So don't fall into the trap of not taking no for an answer. And also, if it's not your personality, I'd say just let it go and move on to the next person. Let's talk about the next one. I call it fake urgency. This is the person gets you on a sales call or they send you a sales link and they say, hey, just FYI, this deal will expire in 48 hours or this deal ends in 24 hours. And I call this the Bed Bath Beyond coupon. Or the Bed Bath Beyond effect. And here's what's funny to me is here's what happens with Bed Bath Beyond. My wife and I noticed that when we first got married, we did our registry at Bed Bath Beyond, and we got an email that was like, you have a 20% off coupon that expires in 5 days or something like that. Well, we didn't use it. Well, after 5 days, we got another email that said, your 20% offer is enclosed in this email. Well, when that one expired, we got another one. And I was laughing about this because I was going through my email, I was kind of clicking through some spam. And one of my emails that I had just received was, your 20% offer is enclosed. So now I don't mean to imply anything malicious on Bed Bath Beyond's for them. But it's funny to me that we've been married over 10 years and I keep getting this coupon, 20% off, expires in 5 days or however many days it is now. This is fake urgency. This is something that is trying to get someone to make a decision in the short term, even when it may not be in their best interest, even when they don't have anything to buy from Bed Bath Beyond. It's like, oh, I got to use the coupon. And there's plenty of data out there that shows that this is how we buy, by the way. Like the fear of scarcity, the fear of missing out, FOMO, what have you. It works. That's why so many people do it. Now, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. But many people do this because it is shown to actually work. So the other thing that's really funny about this, by the way, is when I see these digital offers or these coupon offers for like a digital product. And so it's like, which this is different, by the way, from like an early bird thing. An early bird thing, I have a customer doing like an early bird sell for their advertising company. And it's like, hey, this is a new product. We don't really know like where this is going to go long term. It's almost kind of like a beta offer. I'm willing to price it at this number for those who are getting started with it. But at some point, the price is going to go up. Or I'm pretty confident that at some point, the price is going to increase from X to Y. And there's a way, by the way, to handle all that and do all that in a way that feels good and feels okay. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the digital product that's like, hey, this deal ends Friday night at 10 p.m. And it's like, it's an online course. It's an online service. You know, it's these things that there's no inventory, there's no stock. It's not going to go anywhere. And yet there is like this fake urgency thing around it that is ultimately kind of silly. So anyway. All right, let's move on to the next one. The other one's kind of related to the very first one. I call it the fake offer. This is when someone reaches out because they want to share information with you. When I say fake offer, actually, that's probably the wrong way to put it. I would call this the fake invitation or the fake request, or there's probably a lot of different versions for it. But I got an email. Let me pull it up, actually. I got this email today. You're invited to the English speaking show happening on September 4th. I mean, this just looks like I'm sure this actually is spam or probably somebody to steal my information. Let's not do that one. Let's grab a different one. Here we go. I got this other email. Hey, can we feature your podcast to 47,000 guest experts? And I got this email today, actually. It said, hey, we're interested in featuring your podcast for free in our newsletter that gets sent out to 47,000 experts ready to be interviewed, many of which are focused on business growth and sales. There is no charge for podcasts to find guests with our platform. We send a newsletter to our members twice a week that has 10 podcasts they're looking for, blah, 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 blah. Please let me know if you're interested. I will talk to you about more information. Here's some more information about us, yada, yada. So if you're a little green to the business world, this probably sounds like a great deal. You're like, oh my gosh, Blake, you can have your podcast shown to 47,000 people. Squad, this is a sales email. That is what this is. This is a sales email. You have no idea the number of, let me do this for you. I'd love to highlight you. I'd love to spotlight you. We'd love to partner with you for free. It's no cost, what have you. You can know these things are almost always at cost. And there is some roundabout way, if not directly, to make you a customer. Sometimes what that looks like is they actually do spotlight you for free, and they do it one time, and then they come back and they say, wow, look at all these people who clicked on your stuff. They made sure to put it at like the front of the list or what have you. And then they come back and say, hey, well, we got some awesome results for you. We had all these people who looked. Hey, if you'd like to do this again, here's our monthly rate. And what they try to do is they try to leverage the inflated marketing-esque numbers they put in front of you to get you to buy from them. But I call this the fake offer because it's not a genuine offer. No one's actually reaching out to say, hey, could I help you? Could I share this with our network? Yada, yada. What they're doing is they are pretending to do that so that they can actually sell to you eventually. So don't do that. Basically, you're lying. That's what I should call it. I mean, you're basically lying. You're not really intending to do this. You're actually trying to sell to someone. And by the way, I'm real big on being straightforward with people who you want to sell to. Another version of this, I think, is, and a friend and I just talked about this the other day, when someone invites you to be on their show, but they're really just trying to sell you. And so like they want to meet before the episode to talk about your business. And then you get into that meeting before the episode and they say, well, hey, by the way, these things that you want to talk about on the show, we can actually help you with that. We can do that. And I'm not, by the way, this isn't to say I've had people come on my show who became great customers. I have a great customer right now who I first met him through the podcast. So like this is going to happen. There's nothing wrong with doing business as you meet people. The issue is lying from the get-go and and basically saying, hey, I want to do this thing for you, but really it's trying to get them to buy from you, which is just, again, it's slimy. It's not good. So anyway, sorry, you can probably hear my kids are just, going crazy in the background. So maybe you can't, who knows? All right. And then the last one. This is probably the most dangerous one because this is the source of a number of scams. I love the YouTuber CoffeeZilla. His whole brand is around exposing people who lie and cheat and steal. But I call this one the overpromise, or the subtitle would be, "We will solve every problem you have." This is the person who, and I'll give you actually a good example of this. I had someone call me. I got into a cold call maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I get on this call with someone, and this guy he says, "Hey, so you're a consultant, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, hey, how would you like to grow your business?" And I said, "Okay, what do you have in mind?" And he goes, "Well, I actually work with consultants like you. It's very little money down, and actually, we take businesses from 5 and 6 figures, and we take them to 9 and 10 figure businesses just in 6 months." I kind of laughed and I go, 9 and 10 you take them to $1 billion business? And he goes, well, yeah, that's what we do." And I was like, well, why? Like, I was kind of confused because I was like, this person probably gets paid off commission. So I was like, I mean, if you're making that much money, like, why are you cold calling? Like, shouldn't you have like endless amounts of people at your door? And he goes, "Oh, hey, I like to give back." And I was like, "Okay, guy." But he was like, "I like to give back. So I like to work with as many people as I can." But this is a very common scam, a very common sales tactic of, it's so easy. The results are insane. It's going to solve every problem you have. And also I see this paired with a no risk statement as well, where the person might say, guaranteed or your money back, no cost to you, yet there is a cost. You can just know that, having been in business for 6 years, I don't know everything, and there's a lot I don't know, but I do know this: there is no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. There's no short-term fix or answer to the hard work that is required to build a business. Okay? If there was an answer, you can know that it would have been leaked by now by someone for clout. There's not some paywall hidden answer that's an overnight answer to running a business. It just doesn't exist. It's not out there. There are, however, plenty of salespeople who would love to convince you that their answer, that their solution is the answer for you, and that the results will be so momentous and incredible and awe-inspiring. Everything's just going to work. You're going to be making so much money. One of the ways I see this happen, by the way, is some people call it a gap analysis. I don't even know I don't know what today's marketing term is for it, but it's basically like someone says, they say, "Hey, let's talk about your business today. What's going on?" "Oh, I'm, making this much money, what have you." You get it, whatever details. Well, then they say, "Hey, in 1 year, if your business was where you'd want it to be, how much money would you be making? If everything was just working, how much money would you be making?" And you say, "I don't know. I mean, I'm working less hours and I'm making a lot more money. Maybe I'm making $1 million plus." What the person then does is they take that as like a foundational piece to then be like, "Hey, our answer, our solution, our product can get you there. You just told me you want that. I can get that for you." Now, it's never that simple. It's never that easy, but this is the overpromise that people rely on to turn people into customers of theirs. And it's ultimately, it's not truthful. It's not honest. The same thing is true, by the way. I know I have a lot of people who listen to the show who maybe you have your own podcast. The same thing is true in podcasting. When I sell podcasting services, when I sell any services, actually, I am incredibly transparent from the get-go. I'm incredibly transparent. So I was selling some good advice services to someone the other day, and they said, "Hey, I want to double my revenue. Is that something you can do?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know if I can do it." Now, it wasn't like being underserving of myself. Well, I mean, it's your business. I'm not going to be taking over. I'm not going to be clocking in every day. Now I'm going to give you some great advice. I'll lead you along the way, but I'm not showing up 40 hours a week for you. Doubling your business is going to take you either doubling the hours you put in or finding a way to double the amount of impact from the time you are putting in. Now, will good advice do that for you? It's going to do great stuff for you, but I don't know if it's going to double it. I think it's going to be reliant on how well you take that advice and run with it. I give similar advice, by the way, to brand new business owners who become customers of mine. When I say, hey, we're going to get the business launched. We're going to get you working in sales, all this stuff. But I make it very clear, you're the one running your business. You're going to have to get out there and sell. You're going to have to get out there and make and build your network, build connections. I'm not going to do it. You have to do it. Now, I'd probably sell a lot more money if I just said, yeah, if you work with me, we're going to double your sales. We're going to triple your revenue. I have, by the way, had customers where we've tripled and doubled revenue, but that's not a marketing point for me. It's not a, hey, this is what it looks like to work together, because it's not the realistic outcome for every business. Same thing with podcasting. I help people with their podcasting, or I have a podcast service that I sell. I'll help you launch your podcast. I mean, I would sell a lot more of it if I was like, yeah, if we work together, then by episode 10, you're going to be in the top 100. I'd love to say that. It is not what's going to happen, though. What I typically tell people when they start their podcast is, unless you already have a meaningful network, which some people do, unless you already have a meaningful network, you can plan on 100 episodes before you start seeing real momentum. Now, if you plan to post once a month, then it's going to take you at least 10 years to get to that point. If you're posting twice a month, it's obviously half that time. And if you're posting 4 times a month, you're looking at 2 years to get to 100 episodes, right? Is that right? 4 times a month, that's 4 episodes a month. Yeah, 2 years to get to that point. Are you willing to try something for 2 years? Doesn't mean you can't attain it in a quicker result. And frankly, having someone like me is going to get you there faster. But this is a road of endurance and consistency in building a tribe. It's not a road of quick answers and quick fixes. And you're going to want to do it the right way anyway. So I never overpromise anything. I never promise them the world. I promise what they can actually expect. And frankly, it gets me a lot happier customers as a result. So looking at this list, guilting the prospect, not taking no for an answer, giving like a fake invitation, having fake urgency, or overpromising something, which of these have you fallen victim to? Or worse, which one are you trying to do yourself? Remember, honest relationships are what is going to generate meaningful income for your business. People buy from people, so be a normal human being. Hey, that's today's episode on the show. Thanks for tuning into the podcast today. If you're a first-time listener, make sure you're subscribed or following the podcast. We have a couple episodes every week. All that to say, I appreciate those of you who listened and those of you who support the show and advertise on the show and support on the Patreon as well. So all that to say, that's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.